The air in the grand synod of the Ethelgard hegemony did not smell of fear. It smelled of ozone, recycled nitrogen, and the acrid, metallic scent of overheating neuroprocessors. High Archon Valoris stood before the obsidian window, a monolithic pane of transparency that separated the climatic silence of the council chamber from the chaotic, burning ruin of the Valdera sector. Behind him, the panicked murmurs of a dozen different species blended into a cacophony of dread, a symphony of civilizations realizing their impending extinction. The hologram at the center of the room, usually a majestic blue sphere representing the hegemony's controlled space, was now a fractured web of crimson warnings and blinking void-black zones where stars had simply ceased to exist. They called it the Scourge, a biological mechanical tide that did not conquer but consumed, stripping planetary crusts for minerals and atmosphere for fuel, leaving behind dead, gray husks floating in the silence. Valoris placed a three-fingered hand against the cold glass, his primary eyes narrowing as he watched the distant, flickering lights of the Seventh Fleet engaging the enemy. They were dying. He knew this without needing the tactical feed. The flashes of light were too brief, the silence between them too long. The pride of the Ethelgard, the masters of the galactic arm for 10,000 cycles, was being swatted away like insects before a gale. "The humans are late," came the voice of Exarch Kalen, a reptilian strategist whose scales had dulled to a pale gray, a sign of extreme physiological stress. Kalen was seated at the curved tactical desk, his claws digging into the interface console. "Or more likely, they are not coming. We were fools to trust the invitation to the Sol systems. They are a merchant species, Valoris. They build trade lanes and orbital habs. They do not fight wars of this magnitude. Their military is a police force for pirates and smugglers. To expect them to stand against the Scourge is the desperation of the drowning grasping at floating debris." Valoris turned slowly, his ceremonial robes rustling with a sound like dry leaves, a sharp contrast to the sleek, sterile aesthetics of the chamber. He looked at the gathered representatives, the aquatic Hydari floating in their suspension tanks, the insectoid Chelik clicking their mandibles in anxiety, and the energy-based Voct flickering with unstable luminescence. They all looked to him, not for salvation, but for permission to despair. "We did not ask them to fight, Kalen," Valoris said, his voice low, resonating with a gravity that silenced the room. "We asked them to hold the line. The Sol ambassador assured us that they had assets in the quadrant. He used the word assets. Not fleets, not dreadnoughts. Assets. Ambiguity is a human specialty, is it not?" "Ambiguity does not stop plasma borers," the Chelik representative chattered, its compound eyes fracturing Valoris's reflection into 1,000 tiny images of defeat. "The Seventh Fleet reports hull integrity failure across the board. The Scourge flagship, if one can call that monstrosity a ship, is advancing on the core relay. If the relay falls, the pathway to the Ethelgard homeworld is open. We are discussing semantics while the executioner sharpens his blade. We should be evacuating the High Council, not waiting for a primitive species to arrive with, what? A freighter, a diplomatic courier." The hologram flickered violently, the red zones expanding. A warning chime, strident and piercing, cut through the debate. The censor officer, a young Ethelgardian named Thera, looked up from her station, her face a mask of confusion. "High Archon," she stammered, her fingers dancing over the holographic interface. "I am reading something. It is not the Scourge. It is not the Seventh Fleet. It is emerging from the sublayer of hyperspace, but the signature is wrong. It is too large. The mass displacement is causing gravitational shearing in the local system. Tides are shifting on the moons of Valdera Prime." "The Scourge has reinforcements?" Kalen asked, his voice trembling. "No," Thyra whispered, her eyes widening as the data streamed across her retinas. "The IFF transponder is broadcasting an open chaotic frequency. It is archaic, analog. It is decoding now." She paused, the silence in the room stretching to a breaking point. "It reads United Nations of Sol, vessel designation UNS Atlas, classification heavy engineering and support." "Engineering," the Voct representative flared with blue indignation. "We are facing the apocalypse and they send a repair crew? This is an insult. This is the arrogance of the primates, thinking they can fix a war with a wrench." Valoris did not speak. He watched the main view screen. The sensor grid was struggling to render the object emerging from the rift. Space itself seemed to groan, the stars around the entry point warping as if viewed through thick, flawed glass. And then it arrived. It did not streak out of hyperspace with the sleek, predatory grace of an Ethelgard cruiser. It did not shimmer with the ethereal beauty of a Haidari star sail. It pushed its way into reality with the brute force of a tectonic plate shifting. The sheer scale of the vessel defied the logic of military engagement. It was a blocky, utilitarian nightmare of gray durasteel and ceramite, a sprawling cityscape of industrial machinery, gantries, sensor arrays, and docking bays. It was not shaped like a spear or a disc. It was shaped like a hammer, a massive, rectangular slab of manufacturing capability that dwarfed the Scourge flagship. By the ancestors, Kalen breathed, standing up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. Look at the readings. That is not a ship. That is a mobile station. Look at the drive plumes. They are venting enough plasma to sterilize a continent. Why is it so big? What is the tactical advantage of such a target profile? The Scourge will tear it apart. Magnify, Valorous ordered, his curiosity overcoming his dread. The screen zoomed in. The surface of the human vessel was a hive of activity. Thousands of drones, barely visible as specks, swarmed its hull. Lights flickered along its spine, which stretched for kilometers. It looked less like a weapon and more like a piece of infrastructure that had torn itself loose from a planet. Open a channel. I want to speak to the commander of that thing. The connection took moments to establish, the static clearing to reveal the bridge of the human vessel. It was shockingly mundane. No grand throne, no dim mood lighting, no chanting acolytes. It looked like a factory control room. The crew wore practical jumpsuits with grease stains and pockets filled with tools. In the center sat a human older with hair the color of steel wool and a face etched with the lines of someone who had spent a lifetime reading stress gauges. He held a ceramic mug in one hand and was looking at a datapad with an expression of mild annoyance. "This is High Archon Valorous of the Ethelgard Hegemony," Valorous said, projecting his voice with the regal authority of his station. "You have entered a combat zone, human vessel. You are in immediate danger. The entity known as the Scourge is engaging our fleet. Identify your intent." The human looked up, blinking as if he had just realized the screen was on. He took a slow sip from his mug before placing it on the console. "High Archon," the human said, his voice gravelly and calm, lacking any of the panic that permeated the Ethelgard Council. "I'm Director Vance, UNS Atlas. We received your distress call regarding a let's see here." He tapped the datapad. "A biological containment breach and hostile negotiation regarding territory. We're here to facilitate the remediation of the sector." "Remediation," the Vogt representative shouted, its light pulsing red. "This is a war. Those are warships destroying our civilization. You have brought a factory to a slaughter." Vance looked at the Vogt, his expression unreadable. "Well, that's a matter of perspective, isn't it? To a soldier, everything looks like a target. To an engineer, everything looks like a stress fracture. We're not here to fight your war, counselor. We're here to fix the problem. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have a lot of mass to move and the local gravity well is a bit messy. Atlas out." The screen went black. "They are insane," Kalen whispered. "They are going to die, and we are going to watch them die." But Valorous was watching the tactical plot. The Atlas was moving. It did not accelerate quickly. Its inertia was immense. But it moved with an inexorable purpose, placing itself directly between the ragged remains of the 7th Fleet and the advancing Scourge Armada. The Scourge, sensing a new, massive source of biomass and metal, shifted their attention. Their swarm ships, organic horrors of bone and biosteel, turned away from the Ethelgard cruisers and swarmed toward the human vessel like locusts toward a harvest. "They have no shields," Thyra noted, her voice trembling. "High Archon, I am reading no energy shielding on the human vessel, just polarized hull plating. They are flying naked into the swarm." "Fools," Valorous murmured. The first wave of Scourge plasma fire struck the Atlas. Explosions blossomed across its hull, silent in the vacuum but blindingly bright. The Council flinched, but when the smoke cleared, the Atlas was still there. The plating was scorched, cratered in places, but the structure was compromised. It was simply too thick. The humans had not built a ship with shields that could fail. They had built a mountain that simply endured. And then the Atlas responded. "Energy spike detected," Thyra shouted. "Weapon systems powering up. No, wait, it's not weapons. It's high-output tractor beams, industrial lasers. High Archon, they are deploying mining equipment." On the screen, massive arms unfolded from the sides of the AT. Laws, they were not gun batteries. They were gravity tethers used for hauling asteroids. Beams of invisible force lashed out, seizing the lead Scourge cruisers. The alien ships designed for speed and agility struggled against the grip of a machine built to tow billions of tons of ore. The Atlas did not fire at them. It simply grabbed them. And then, with a terrifying, slow mechanical grind that vibrated through the sensor readings, the Atlas slammed the Scourge ships into each other. It was brutal, primitive, and horribly effective. Two Scourge dreadnoughts caught in the gravity tethers were smashed together like toys. Their hulls buckled, their biocores rupturing in a spray of fluid and fire. The Atlas released the wreckage and grabbed two more. That's not warfare," Kalen stammered, his strategist mind unable to process the data. "They are using industrial physics. They are treating the enemy fleet like debris to be cleared." "Look at the drone swarm," Valoris pointed. The thousands of specks around the Atlas were moving. They were not fighters, they were repair and salvage drones. As the Scourge fighters swarmed closer, the drones intercepted them. They did not shoot. They attached themselves to the hulls of the enemy fighters and began disassembling them. Plasma torches flared as the drones cut through armor, severing fuel lines, welding weapon ports shut, and dismantling the engines while the enemy was still alive. It was a chaotic, terrifying display of micromanagement. The humans were not fighting a battle. They were conducting a rapid, aggressive recycling operation. Inside the council chamber, the mood shifted from despair to a confused awe. The sheer audacity of the human tactic was paralyzing. They were ignoring the rules of engagement. They offered no honor, no formations, no dogfights. They simply imposed their industrial will upon the battlefield. "Incoming transmission from the Atlas," Thyra said. "Audio only." "Put it through," Valoris commanded. "Control, this is Mining Bay 4, a voice crackled, sounding bored. "We've got some biological residue clogging the intake vents on the port side. Can we get a localized purge? These things are sticky." "Copy that, Bay 4, Director Vance's voice replied. "Initiate thermal venting and try to keep the salvage intact. The biosteel alloys are reading high quality. We can use them to patch the forward armor." "Understood, venting." On the screen, a massive cloud of superheated steam and plasma vented from the side of the Atlas, incinerating a squadron of Scourge boarders who were attempting to breach the hull. The humans weren't even using weapons. They were using waste disposal. "This is impossible," the Chellic representative clicked. "No species thinks like this. War is a ritual. War is a test of superiority. This is janitorial work to them." Valoris watched as the Atlas continued its slow, grinding advance. The Scourge, a hive mind that had consumed entire systems, seemed confused. Their tactics relied on overwhelming shields and causing panic. But the Atlas had no shields to break, and the humans seemed incapable of panic. They treated the eldritch horrors of the void as an occupational hazard. The psychological impact on the enemy was palpable. The Scourge fleet faltered, their coordination breaking down as their ships were grabbed, crushed, or dismantled piece by piece. But the true test was yet to come. The Scourge flagship, a moon-sized mass of writhing tentacles and heavy cannons, was moving into position. It charged its main weapon, a spinal mount accelerator capable of cracking a planetary crust. "They cannot survive that," Kalen said, his voice returning to the doom-laden tone of the beginning. "That weapon destroyed the Ethelgard dreadnought invincible in a single shot. The Atlas is large, but it is a stationary target." "Warn them," Valoris shouted. "Thyra, open the channel." "Director Vance," Valoris yelled into the comms. "The enemy flagship is targeting you with a spinal singularity driver. You must take evasive action. You must retreat." Vance's voice came back, calm as ever. "We see it, High Archon, big gun, lots of potential energy there. We're not going to move. We're in the middle of a calibration cycle for the main array. Moving now would throw off the alignment." "You will be vaporized." "Hold on," Vance said. "Chief Engineer, divert power from the lateral thrusters to the forward deflector array, and spin up the magnetic accumulation grid. Let's see if we can catch it." "Catch it," Valoris whispered. The Scourge flagship fired. A beam of concentrated dark matter, purple and black, tore through the void. It struck the Atlas dead center. The council chamber was bathed in blinding light. The sensors screamed and died. Silence fell. The aliens covered their eyes, waiting for the debris field, waiting for the end of the human folly. Slowly, the light faded. The sensors rebooted, flickering back to life. The Atlas was still there. The front of the ship was glowing cherry red, the metal groaning audibly over the transmission, but it was intact. A shimmering field of magnetic distortion held the energy of the Scourge weapon in a ball of violent plasma, suspended just meters from the hull. The humans hadn't blocked it. They had caught the energy in a magnetic bottle, the same kind they likely used to contain fusion reactions in their reactors. Energy absorption at 100%, a background voice on the human bridge announced. Capacitors are full. That was a nice top-up. We were running a bit low on the secondary grid. Return to sender, Vance said. The magnetic field reversed polarity. The ball of captured energy, now amplified by the Atlas's own power reserves, was launched back along the vector it came from. It struck the Scourge flagship with the force of a dying star. The biological behemoth didn't just explode, it unraveled. The impact shattered its structural spine, and the feedback loop fried the hive-mind connection. In seconds, the terrifying flagship was reduced to a drifting cloud of burning organic matter. Target neutralized, Vance said. Okay, people, shift change is in 10 minutes. Let's clean up this debris field before the next rotation. I want the trade lanes clear by 800. The Ethelgard High Council stood in stunned silence. They had witnessed the might of their empire crumble before the Scourge. They had watched a single human industrial vessel dismantle the threat not with warriors' rage, but with the dispassionate efficiency of a demolition crew. Valorous sank into his chair. He realized then that they had fundamentally misunderstood humanity. They thought the humans were weak because they did not glorify war. But the truth was far more terrifying. Humans did not glorify war because they did not see it as a special event. To them, conflict was just another engineering problem, and they were the best engineers in the galaxy. The silence in the chamber was broken by the soft chime of the comms. High Archon, Vance's voice returned. We're picking up some strange readings from the debris of the flagship. Looks like a beacon. It's transmitting a signal directed outside the galaxy. We're going to tow the wreckage to a containment zone and analyze it. We might need your scientists to help decipher the syntax. It looks old. Older than you, older than us. Valorous looked at the screen. The Atlas was already moving, its tractor beams dragging the burning carcass of the enemy flagship. We are at your disposal, Director, Valorous said, his voice humble. Good, Vance said. Oh, and High Archon, next time don't call it a war, bad for business. Call it a hazard containment operation. Easier to get the budget approved. Atlas out. The channel closed. The council remained silent. They are not warriors, the Vogt representative whispered, its light dim and awed. No, Valorous said, staring at the lumbering shape of the human ship. They are something else. They are the caretakers, and we have just seen what happens when the weeds try to take over the garden. The transition from the immediate shock of the battle to the aftermath was a slow, surreal process for the Ethelgard. The frantic red lights of the war room were replaced by the cool, steady blues of analysis and recovery. But the tension had not dissipated. It had transmuted into a profound, unsettling curiosity. The Atlas did not leave. It parked itself in a high geostationary orbit over the Valdara core relay, a silent, ugly, magnificent sentinel. Shuttles began to ferry back and forth, sleek, beautiful Ethelgard craft contrasting with the brick-like human landers. Valorous insisted on meeting Director Vance in person. It was a breach of protocol for a High Archon to board a foreign vessel, especially one that wasn't a designated diplomatic cruiser, but the rules of the old world seemed to have burned away with the Scourge flagship. He took a small entourage, Kalen for security and logic, and Lysis, the Empire's foremost xenolinguist and cultural analyst. The interior of the Atlas was an assault on their senses. Where Ethelgard ships were silent, sterile, and lit with soothing ambient glows, the Atlas roared. The deck plates vibrated with the thrum of massive engines. Pipes ran along the ceilings, hissing with steam or coolant. The air smelled of oil, coffee, and ozone. It was hot, humid, and loud. Crew members moved with purpose, dodging the automated cargo sleds, shouting over the noise of machinery. They ignored the alien dignitaries, focused entirely on their tasks. It is so chaotic, Lysis whispered, her delicate hearing frills fluttering against her head. How do they function? There is no harmony. There is function, Kalen observed, his eyes tracking the movement of a loading crane. Look, no wasted movement. The chaos is superficial. Underneath it is a complex adaptive algorithm. They do not follow a stat. Like plan, they adjust in real time. They were led to a briefing room that doubled as a cafeteria. One wall was entirely glass, looking out over the ship's massive repair bay where the remains of the Scourge flagship were being dissected. Director Vance stood there, looking smaller than he had on the screen, but no less imposing. He was wiping grease from his hands with a rag. High Archon, Vance said, nodding. He didn't bow. Welcome aboard, sorry about the mess. We're still running diagnostics on the main deflector dish. That impact rattled a few fillings. Director Vance, Valoris said, bowing slightly, a gesture of immense respect that made Kalen stiffen. You saved our sector, you saved our empire. We owe you a debt that cannot be calculated. Vance shrugged, tossing the rag into a bin. Like I said, we were in the neighborhood. Besides, the Scourge, or whatever you call them, were disrupting the hyperlanes. Bad for commerce. If the shipping schedules get thrown off, people on Earth don't get their exotic teas, and then the politicians get grumpy. Trust me, you don't want grumpy politicians. He gestured to the table. Sit. Coffee, it's a stimulant. Might be toxic to some of you, so check your scanners. They sat. Valoris declined the black liquid. Director, we must discuss the capabilities of your vessel. We have analyzed the battle data. The energy output you demonstrated. It exceeds theoretical limits for a ship of this mass. You manipulated gravity. You captured a singularity. These are technologies we associate with the precursor races, not with respect a young species. Vance chuckled, a dry, rasping sound. Young? Yeah, I guess we are, but we're stubborn. See, you guys, the Empire, you developed tech based on elegance. You found the energy flows of the universe and you learned to swim in them. Humans, we didn't find flows, we found walls, and we learned to smash through them. That gravity tether, it's not a weapon. It's for moving asteroids into smelting orbits. The magnetic bottle, it's for containing fusion spills in colonial reactors. We didn't build this stuff to kill aliens. We built it to survive our own mistakes. Lysis leaned forward. This concept, surviving mistakes, you imply your technology is born of failure. Evolution through trauma, Vance said, taking a sip of his coffee. We broke our own planet twice. We nearly wiped ourselves out a dozen times. Every piece of tech on this ship exists because at some point in our history something went wrong and we had to engineer a way out of it. We don't have the luxury of elegance. We have redundancy. We have duct tape. And we have a refusal to die. And the weapon, Kalen asked. The one you used to destroy the flagship. Wasn't a weapon, Vance corrected. It was a feedback loop. We just held up a mirror. They killed themselves with their own aggression. That's a key human philosophy, by the way. Judo, use the opponent's strength against them, saves fuel. The door to the briefing room slid open, and a woman entered. She was younger than Vance, dressed in a white lab coat that was surprisingly clean. She held a data slate, her face pale. Director, she said, ignoring the aliens. We've cracked the signal from the beacon. You need to see this. Vance's demeanor shifted instantly. The tired worker vanished, replaced by the sharp, alert commander. Show me. He took the slate, his eyes scanning the data. His frown deepened. Are you sure? 99% probability. The syntax matches the Sol Proxima archaeological finds. It's pre-collapse human code, Director, but twisted. Vance looked up at Valoris. Hi, Archon. How much do you know about the origin of the Scourge? Valoris hesitated. Very little. They appeared on the fringe of the galaxy 3 cycles ago. They consume. They do not communicate. They're communicating now, Vance said grimly. He tapped the slate, projecting a hologram onto the table. It was a star map, but not of the current galaxy. The stars were in different positions. It was a map from millions of years ago. The beacon inside that flagship wasn't alien, Vance said, his voice quiet. It was a warning buoy, specifically a quarantine marker. Quarantine, Lysis asked. For whom? For us, Vance said. The room went dead silent. Or rather, for what humanity used to be, or what we were created to fight. The data is fragmented, but it looks like the Scourge isn't an invasion force. It's an automated immune system, and it was triggered because it detected something in this sector that registered as a pathogen. We are the pathogen? Kalen asked, offended. No, Vance said. Not you, us, or something related to us. He looked at Valoris. This ship, the Atlas, it's not just a factory, it's a legacy design. We found the blueprints in a vault on Mars. We thought we were building a deep space construction vessel, but if this data is right, we were building a key. A key to what? Valoris asked. Vance stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the broken carcass of the enemy. The Scourge flagship, it didn't attack us immediately, it scanned us. It recognized the Atlas. It hesitated. That's why we could catch the beam. It held back. It was confused. He turned back to the aliens. There's a signal coming from outside the galactic rim. The beacon was trying to relay a message to it. The message was, containment breached. The architects have returned. You are the architects, Lysis whispered. I don't think so, Vance said. I think we're the janitors. The architects are the ones who left the mess, and I think they're coming back to see why the alarm is ringing. The implications hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. The war against the scourge, which the Ethelgard had viewed as a struggle for survival, was suddenly recontextualized as a minor malfunction in a much larger, much older machine. And humanity, the young race, the mechanics and merchants, held the user manual that no one else could read. What do we do? Valorous asked. It was a surrender of authority. He was the high archon of a 10,000-year empire asking a human engineer for instructions. Vance looked at the map again. The Scourge is going to regroup. That flagship was just a drone. The real hive mind is out there in the dark. If they think the architects are back, they're going to escalate. They won't send ships next time. They'll send world breakers. We cannot fight that, Kalen said. No, we can't fight it, Vance agreed. But we can fix it. If the Scourge is an immune system, we need to convince it that we aren't the virus. We need to reset the system. How? Vance smiled, a grim, determined expression. We're going to take the Atlas to the source of the signal, into the void between galaxies. We're going to find the central node of this Scourge, and we're going to hack it. We're going to turn it off. That is suicide, the Chellic representative said, trembling. The void is empty, it is death. It's not empty, Vance said. It's just undeveloped real estate, and we're bringing our own atmosphere. He looked at Valorous. We'll need support, not ships. We have the firepower, we need data, your archives, your history. We need to piece together the timeline of this galaxy to understand what triggered the system. The Ethelgard have been here longer than us. You remember things we've forgotten. We need your memories. Valorous stood slowly. He looked at his hands, then at the human. He realized that the era of Ethelgard supremacy was over, but an era of partnership, of survival, was beginning. The humans were not the rulers of the galaxy, nor were they its servants. They were its mechanics, and the engine was broken. You shall have access to the Obsidian archives, Valorous said solemnly. You shall have our scholars, our maps, and our history. If we are to die, let us die knowing the truth. Deal, Vance said. Now get your people ready. We're breaking orbit in 12 hours, and tell your fleet to stand down. If they shoot at the Scourge, it just makes the immune response worse. Let us handle the negotiations. Negotiations? Kalen asked. With a biological swarm. Everything has a language, Vance said. Math, music, DNA, it's all code. We just need to find the right frequency. As the Ethelgard delegation left the Atlas, Valorous looked back at the massive, ugly ship. It hung against the stars like a monument to stubbornness. He felt a strange sensation in his chest. It wasn't hope exactly. It was something more solid, trust. He returned to the sanctum and looked at the hologram of the galaxy. The red zones were still there, but they no longer looked like wounds. They looked like tasks, problems to be solved. Status of the fleet, he asked his bridge crew. Holding position, High Archon, Thyra reported. The Scourge vessels are idling, they are mirroring the Atlas, they are waiting. Good, Valorous said. Let them wait, the humans are working. Deep within the Atlas, far below the bridge, in the searing heat of the main engineering deck, a different kind of meeting was taking place. A group of human engineers stood around a massive, pulsating component salvaged from the Scourge flagship. It was organic, twitching, alive. It's beautiful, one engineer said, adjusting her goggles. Look at the neural density. It's not just a processor, it's a dreamer. Can we interface with it? Another asked. We can try, the chief engineer said. He held up a heavy, sparking cable, the end modified with a dozen different adapters. I had to jury-rig a connector using a toaster oven controller and a hyperdrive regulator. It's not pretty. Does it ever have to be? Nope, plug it in. The cable was thrust into the wet, throbbing mass of the alien biocore. Sparks flew. The lights on the deck flickered. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the organic mass shuddered. It changed color, shifting from a violent purple to a calm pulsing. Gee, blue. A voice echoed through the ship's speakers. It was not Vance's voice. It was not human. It was a chorus of billions of voices speaking in perfect unison. Connection established. System diagnostic initiated. Identify architect subroutine. Vance's voice cut in over the intercom. This is Director Vance. We're not the architects. We're the independent contractors. We're here to perform maintenance. There was a pause, a silence that spanned light years. Contractor credentials VERIFIED. Error in Sector 7. Containment protocols suspended. Awaiting input. On the bridge, Vance slumped into his chair, letting out a breath he felt he had been holding for hours. He looked at the screen where the Scourge fleet, billions of tons of murder machines, suddenly turned their lights from red to blue and powered down their weapons. Told you, Vance muttered to himself. Everything's just a broken appliance if you look at it right. He keyed the comms to the Ethelgard Council. Hi, Archon. You can put away the doom and gloom speeches. The war is on hold. We just put the system in safe mode. In the Grand Synod, Valorous stared at the screen. The red zones on the map were turning blue. The Scourge was not retreating. It was entering a standby cycle. The galaxy, which had been screaming, was now quiet. Safe mode, Valorous repeated, testing the alien words. He looked at Kalen, whose jaw was hanging open. They put the apocalypse in safe mode. What happens now? Thyra asked, her voice filled with a childlike wonder. Valorous looked out the obsidian window at the UNS Atlas. It was firing its maneuvering thrusters, turning its massive bulk toward the galactic rim, toward the dark void where the ancient signal originated. The Scourge ships, like obedient dogs, fell into formation behind it, not to attack, but to follow. Now, Valorous said, a small smile touching his lips for the first time in years. Now we follow the janitors, and we see what lies in the basement of the universe. The Atlas engaged its drive. It did not jump to hyperspace. It simply accelerated, tearing a hole in the fabric of the night, dragging a fleet of monsters behind it, heading into the unknown to fix a mistake made before the stars were born. The Ethelgard fleet, battered but unbroken, fell in line. The humans had shown them that the unknown was not to be feared. It was just another problem to be engineered. And as the fleet moved out, leaving the Valdera sector behind, the stars seemed to shine a little brighter, as if the universe itself was relieved that someone, finally, had come to fix the plumbing. But in the depths of the Atlas's computer core, buried beneath layers of encryption and firewalls, a single line of text flashed on a forgotten monitor, unnoticed by the crew celebrating their victory. It was a message from the beacon, fully decoded now, ominously simple. Maintenance request acknowledged. The architects are awake. They are displeased with the renovations. The cursor blinked. The message faded. The ship sailed on, carrying the hope of the galaxy into the jaws of its creators. The war was over. The audit was about to begin. And humanity, with its duct tape and its stubbornness, was the only thing standing between the galaxy and a total recall. Vance watched the stars streak by. He didn't know about the final message yet, but he felt a twinge in his gut, the kind he got when a turbine was slightly off balance. He took a sip of his cold coffee. All right, he said to the empty bridge. Let's go see who's in charge. The Atlas vanished into the dark, a brick thrown through the window of eternity, ready to shatter whatever glass ceiling awaited them. The story of the war was done. The story of the origin was just starting. And for the first time in history, the Ethelgard weren't praying to their gods for salvation. They were radioing the humans for a status update. And the humans, as always, were just getting to work. The silence of the void returned, but it was no longer empty. It was filled with the hum of engines, the chatter of binary, and the indomitable, terrifying, wonderful sound of human industry marching into the face of God, armed with a wrench and a very bad attitude about broken things. The Galactic Empire had been shaken, yes, but it had not fallen. It had been caught, braced, and bolted together by the rough hands of Terra. And as the Council watched the fleet disappear, Valorous realized the greatest truth of all. The humans were not a warship. They were the anchor, and the storm was just getting started. The lights in the Synod dimmed. The work began. The galaxy spun on, changed forever by the arrival of the mechanics from Sol. And somewhere in the deep dark, something ancient opened its eyes and saw, for the first time, a species that didn't kneel but simply asked for the schematics.